start off with, could you, Patrick, Marco and Reto, quickly introduce yourself for the audience? And then maybe answer me the first question, do you think Libra will exist in 5 years and will disrupt the way we pay, we do foreign exchange in any significant way? Maybe starting with you, Reto.
Yes, hello everybody, my name is Reto Hünerwadel. I work for the Hypothekarbank in Lenzburg. I do that for almost 5 years now. I'm there in the executive management, responsible for market services. There is colleagues of mine here. That's the introduction after 20 odd years at UBS, working colleague of yours. Anyways, do I believe that Libra is going to exist 5 years from here? Absolutely, yes. I think it's going to be a success. I do think there's going to be a lot of payments being done through Libra, but at the same time, I think it's important to mention that obviously you have these early movers. There will be some early movers, but there will be also those guys like I know some of them that still don't have e-banking, so there will be some guys that will not use this medium of payment going forward.
My name is Patrick Heusser. I work for the crypto broker. We're here in Zurich. The holding is crypto finance. We have several departments in it. My background is traditional finance as well. I worked 18 years for UBS. Was chained for 15 years at a trading desk, FX and interest rates. And on your two questions, I do believe that Libra will be around in 5 years' time, but I think in a totally different form than they just presented it to us. And therefore, I believe that many things will be different in a very short time.
Mauro, Casellini, CEO of Bitcoin Swiss Liechtenstein. I'm responsible for the expansion plans of Bitcoin Swiss, who are based in Zug. Formerly, I worked for Bank Frick, set there up the whole blockchain strategy, worked there for 6 years. I was head of blockchain and payment service providers. Libra will definitely be there in 5 years. I think the same in a completely different way than they showed it to us now, because there are a lot of problems on a regulatory view if they set it up like they have now told us that they will do it.
So thank you very much for introducing yourself. Before I'm thinking of clever questions, I want to involve you guys. So who has a question for the panel?
Hi there. To keep it very basic and maybe to start off, can you in very easy way explain the difference between Libra and Bitcoin?
Yes. There are very distinguished differences between Bitcoin and Libra. For example, John already mentioned it, Libra is not decentralized and it is not permissionless. It is driven by central counterparty or different counterparties, and those are the 28 names we have seen in that circle. They're called validators, and they're basically the gateway or the keepers between money going in and out of the system, and they control it. You're not able to check their so-called blockchain from outside. You have to trust the data you get from these validators, which for me is the big difference between Bitcoin and Libra.
Another big difference is definitely the backing of it. So Libra will be backed officially what they tell by bonds, treasury bonds, and there is where I personally see the first big problem. It's therefore a security and definitely not a payment token. Therefore we have the first problem, especially the European regulation, where it should be e-money, but it's not e-money because it's security, and then we have a lot of problems. And Bitcoin is backed by nothing, it's backed by trust in the system, like in originally every currency, if we are honest.
You said you believe that in 5 years' time Libra will be around, but not in a way that people think about it today. So what is your thought?
It's exactly
used in 5 years?
Exactly what I say. if they set it up like they have set it up now, or say they set it up, it will be security. A lot of tax issues and other problems will be there. Therefore, in the next 5 years, the regulation in Europe or in the world would need to change completely. Therefore, I think the first step they will go, that they need to back it by cash, by statements or by bank accounts.
Yeah, I think maybe if you rephrase the question too, and you don't just think of it as Libra, like typically as a cryptocurrency, but you say, will Facebook still have payments infrastructure or financial infrastructure in 5 years? I think absolutely, and a bigger one. And that's the point of it. It'll change and adapt and have to address all these types of questions as it goes along.
For me, it's as well the point, does Libra really need to have a basket of currency as a fund behind? Why is it not just a utility or just a payment token representing your fiat money on any of these validators' accounts or on your bank account? That would make much more sense to me in that ecosystem. But yes, then we do have an issue about exchange rates, and for the user in Asia, it's a different type of value than for the user in Switzerland.
And Libra will definitely make monetary policy.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the big difference then. Then obviously the central banks and so on and so forth would have to get involved much more actively. And I think one of the interests of one of the ideas that Libra is bringing forward is that they want to cooperate very closely with the regulator, just as not to get into this trap of being kind of a source of monetary policy going forward.
Yeah, one of the points I kind of think on that is if we remember that example of credit card transactions, they were pointing out that all these fintech apps are still connected to the financial infrastructure through credit cards. And, Libra right now is talking about being pegged to these treasury bills and being tied to, again, the traditional financial infrastructure. I always used to think alternative currencies were quite interesting, and there's all kinds of other things you could peg or back that currency with. You could use gold, you could use all sorts of basket of assets, you could use something like an inflation basket or something like that. There's different ways, and I think that's actually a really good example of how the financial side of fintech still has a really interesting role to play here. This is part of financial history, but it's really been dominated by the technology that's been introduced. So we have to figure out what's the right mix of the finance and the technology for this.
Thank you. Other questions? Yeah,
what happens with all money going into Libra and you invest in short-term money market papers and treasury bills? So I assume Libra doesn't pay any interest afterwards, and you or Facebook and all the other companies get a lot of information, get the money out of the financial situations from the clients, and you have the money coming back out of the investments. What happens with those?
Sounds like a good business. I think this is part of why it's important to understand what's going on, not only for our business, but in our companies, but also as individuals, right? For a long time, we've been giving away our data for free, and at a certain point, we need to ask, who's benefiting? Is it good enough for us? It's a great question. I don't know the right answer to it.
And that they haven't answered it, and that's, I think they are really sure why they're not doing it, and that's what I do not like in that concept, because it's definitely a money-making machine for the companies who are involved.
We have actually not seen it on the slides, but the Libra currency concept has two tokens. It's the Libra token and the SIT token. And the SIT token is the one token you get if you're one of the validators. Then you're with the holder, as a holder of the SIT token, you can get the dividends from those investments of the fund. So they get all the money, and they sort of claim that they need the money to make the payment system be very efficient and low fee, on a low fee base. But we all know what happens if a certain amount of big companies or people have the power or the right to manage a very large pool of money. There is a disaster lurking around the corner.
I would like to concentrate on something else as well. It's been asked about the interest rates. Obviously, interest rates right now, right here, are not huge, and if everything's going to be kind of backed by kind of bond investments or fixed income investments, or a large part at least is invested in fixed income investments, chances are, to my understanding, that it's going to stay low for quite some time. And the question then is where it's coming from, the cash and so on and so forth. And as Libra pointed out, it's supposed to be kind of a payment system for developing markets just as well as other things. So I would argue that there will be some money kind of finding its way from the emerging market world into the developed markets, keeping interest rates here in our area of the world comparatively low for some time to come.
I was going to point out the kind of the kind of ethical issues here, and maybe give a bit of a strategy to the financial industry. I think for a long time, tech giants have been able to avoid regulation, and it's been cases like Facebook with the elections, and the other one which strikes my mind as being pretty bad was Uber. 5 years ago they had a reputation of being a really toxic culture, and they had technicians who could play God, and they had, I think, a God setting on their administrator side of their system, and they could follow people's rides. If you were interested in somebody, you could find out where they had ridden home to, and there was some pretty scary behavior going on at these companies, and it was clear that they don't self-police and they don't think ahead, and there's all kinds of other examples where these issues are cropping up. So I think the financial services industry, rather than saying, hey, we've got regulation on our side and we can be relaxed, and tech saying, hey, we don't need to be regulated, we can compete, maybe you want to say tech with the convergence of this stuff is even more scary and probably deserves to be even more closely regulated or scrutinized in some way, because it's got even bigger risks when you put the two together.
Another important topic I see is how if we look at that big of a company, worldwide currency, if, for example, we have two treasury bonds from the US behind it, and it will be really as big as they speak about it, and they will be next to China, the biggest holder of treasury bonds of the USA, and these are 100 companies max at the moment. That will be a huge problem, as they have. Yeah, they can definitely rule the world if they own that much money or hold that much money.
Well, the US will need somebody to buy the bonds.
Mm-hmm. Right? Definitely.
As I understand, Libra is a little bit like the former special drawing rights we had in the past, a little bit like that. And so basically I can't make money out of that, basically, because there are no, speculation on special drawing rights was very hard, basically, and as so we have it on Libra, and I get no interest on it, I get no speculation on it, so I lose year by year money if I hold a lot of Libras for a long time, as a user of Libra. And that comes to the other question: why should I use Libra instead of using Revolut, which has very, very small spreads, especially for a private user, which maybe have euros, Swiss franc, and a little bit of sterling, maybe.
We wrote a piece about it. Why would I use Libra? And you have to look outside of your own country. Here in Switzerland, or probably even in Europe, in some of the very stable countries, there is absolutely no use case for you to go into Libra, because you're fine with your currency in your country, it's stable, and you know what you have. But think about it living in Peru, or in Argentina, or in Turkey, where you have inflation eating away your income. There, it definitely does make sense that you park some of your wealth into Libra, and you're then sort of backed into that basket of currencies, and you can park your wealth for, when your country starts to get better, you can get it back, or you can even pay for some of your daily life things through that coin. But then on the other hand, Libra, for example, always makes the use case, we give unbankable or unbanked people access to payment systems. But I don't think that is quite true, or I really don't see how the Libra Foundation is taking care of, or the validators are taking care of the KYC AML stuff. Because if you're unbanked, then where do you go through the gate of these validators to actually own Libras?
the answer has not been given, has been indicated, has been pointed out that they're going to work with regulators quite explicitly to look into this AML KYC process at length. So I think the people are aware at Libra that this is an issue and that they need to solve it just for this very reasons. But maybe I'm a bit naive, maybe I do believe that they really want to make not much of money out of this Libra and so on and so forth. The financial incentive is not the big incentive for Facebook to start this Libra. They want to basically get the transactions going and so on and so forth. I think that there is this chance there. But at the same time, having said this, I quite obviously also see that there is huge potential for misuse or kind of too much power in certain places and so on and so forth, kind of besides regulation and so on and so forth. I see that there is this risk elaborating, but the original motivation, I believe that it was quite positive.
I think it will be, I see it a little bit different. I think they have definitely the view to make money. Then it's a question of the payments, but that's also the data, because if nowadays I share everything on social media, they know me quite well. If they now also have all my transaction data, they know me definitely better than I know myself. And that's definitely something they can sell to marketing companies, to companies that produce things, and definitely I see their biggest problem, that they can misuse that data. And on the other side, it's also a positive thing, because regulators could use that data to fight against money laundering. So it's a good and a bad thing with that cryptocurrencies or with Libra itself.
Let's face it, MasterCard and Visa has the data already.
Yes.
Already anyway. So basically, you add this, you connect data that you already have to some degree.
But I think Visa and MasterCard are more in the race, because they know if they don't jump on it, they will lose the fight. Because MasterCard was also really early involved in Ethereum cases, but never made something out of it. They were only there to get the data, get the information, and see what's happening there, and if it can hurt them.
I think both of them had, I'm not 100% clear on the history, but I'm pretty sure they both have histories as being consortiums as well, right? They were consortiums for dealing with credit and receivables at consumer firms, and I think it was California was where Visa was set up. But yeah, these things aren't entirely out of their realm of experience. I think it's a case though of if they don't deal with it, they're going to be in trouble very quickly, right? So they're probably at the front of the line recognizing that they're going to be disrupted. You see that also with Swift. They've been really leaders in the whole blockchain discussion for the last 5-10 years. Companies like that are at the forefront of the existing infrastructure recognize that this is a new infrastructure being set up.
Maybe a follow-up question on that one, and also alluding a little bit to what you mentioned in your speak, John. You mentioned something like Libra is part of a bigger plan of Facebook, right? So the ecosystem and everything. And you mentioned, maybe it's not even making money on Libra, and you mentioned the data. So couldn't it be the case that basically this is all part of a, we are the product ultimately, and so they find a way to solidify, so to speak, their distribution channels and information channels. Well, so that's ultimately what's behind that.
I think it's an extension of the way the world works now, right? We have advertising right now. Advertising is tied to industry. Industry works with government. These things all exist in the current system. And there's a new digital economy being shaped. And as we see, China thinks that it understands where it's going. It's playing its cards. And tech giants in the US are playing their cards similarly. If you look at people like Peter Thiel is a philosopher by background. He has anarchist views or libertarian views. He was a big supporter of Trump, and if you talk about why he supported Trump, it's because he doesn't exactly like normal governments, things like monetary policy. And I don't think it's entirely naive what's going on. And then there's the march of technology. If you think about plugging these cryptocurrency systems into artificial intelligence that can tie the information into your advertising stream, there's all kinds of stuff that they can do, and then plug it into your health information, which is another huge area we didn't even think about, but that's it. Blockchains plug right into your health data and prescription data and how drugs are kept through their value chain, so it's all connected. And yeah, that's very powerful.
But, I mean, it will be done anyway, one way or another. Whether it's through Libra or whether it's going to be from some other initiative, it will be done anyway. I do think it's scary and so on and so forth, but it's reality anyway. So it's not necessarily a specific Libra problem.
Right, or a blockchain solution, or that's why like that Norio Ravini quote, I really like. It's just a spreadsheet. There's all these things that are coming together to create this new system.
I would like to pick up on the point, on the bigger plan point. I don't know if you saw it, but which of the two big companies are missing? Amazon and Google. So there must be a reason why those guys are not being part of the plan.
Apple's not on this, right?
Nope.
Apple's not on it.
It's a digital ecosystem thing. It's competitive ecosystems. Tencent, all these companies want to have their own digital ecosystem.
So my guess is they're either not being invited, or they have been invited and they say, well, we might have different plans. And it's probably also the data gathering plan, and it's going to happen anyways, as Reto mentioned, one way or another, especially through Google, which is also plugged into your home, and they know much more about you than you actually know.
Yeah, I think it's like iOS and Android sort of the system. Sorry.
Now you see the same with Apple. With first Apple Pay, so you can put a new credit card on your phone, and now they're setting up their own card. So I see the same. There will definitely be different companies who try to rule the world, to make global currencies. And then it's another question, will governments lose power if these global currencies are there? What does that mean to us? And that's scary.
Really scary. And actually, on another scale, like think about industries. For a long time, people said fintech's a joke. These companies are tiny. Well, companies now like I'm going to forget the name. Wirecard in Germany is now bigger than most of the big banks in Germany. And if you look at, say, hey, you're a big bank like UBS, we want to get into fintech. We're going to buy a tech company. Like, no chance you're going to be able to compete with these people. So the tipping point might have already passed for the finance and technology side of the race. I think there was a question though.
Could Libra also become of interest for central banks? I mean, we heard lately that there is some shift out of US dollar into gold, getting less dependent on dollar. Could that be a driver, being less exposed to US dollar, being out of the SWIFT payment, being less exposed to sanctions?
I would say the most points, I can definitely say yes, that's true, but the sanctions point, I think that's definitely not the point, because they will definitely work with regulators itself, and therefore I think there will even be more sanctions on it. They will definitely control it even better, that they know where the money goes to and where it should go to and where it should not go to. I see it more like that. But the rest definitely, it will be more independent.
And I think as well, Libra is not going to be the coin you are using as an investment company or as an investor to move around millions of dollars or millions of equivalents of euros and dollars. It's micropayments, it's I pay something at the kiosk, or I just buy a t-shirt on Facebook for 20 francs as an exchange. I don't think it's going to try to circumvent the regulators or the sanction list of the US.
With all the pluses and negatives that come with it, yes, absolutely.
Two kind of anecdotes. I think the story of the Bank for International Settlements coming into the fintech landscape and setting up an innovation lab wasn't a coincidence. People like Mark Carney, who's very influential there, they know that these things are threatening the role of central banks, or at least going to influence the role of them, and it's time that they're very actively involved in that. And I remember actually it was, I think, 2015 at Swift's big international conference. The keynote speaker was Bill Gates, which was really impressive. And he was actually in the middle of all the talk about money laundering and hiring hitmen online. He was talking about how he saw blockchain. This was when people were just starting to realize blockchain was going to be the discussion, not just Bitcoin. And he said, when I look at what I'm trying to do with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and directing philanthropic money, like he's giving away, I forget how much the amount is, but tens of billions of dollars through his foundation. The idea that you have programmable money, which is what some people have called cryptocurrencies over the years, the idea that you can track things. You can not only track things, you can also say the money can be used in this way. It's kind of like even food stamps, right? Digital food stamps that say these dollars can only be used on healthcare costs, or this can only be used by your partner, or whatever the case may be. The digital system, it's not just paper money that you can walk around with. Now you've got all these new things that you can program into the financial system.
And what I really like is now that really, because Facebook is jumping on that blockchain, everyone spoke about blockchain, but a lot of governments, European Central Bank, and also, for example, Deutsche Bank never spoke about it. But now there was Libra, and in between a week there was a statement from Deutsche Bankenverband. They have never published something through blockchain, only to Libra. European Central Bank is speaking about it, says, look, we need to change regulation, otherwise it will not work. And that's what I really like, because they realized from the past that companies will do it. We have seen it with Revolut. They are now definitely very legit, but they started with not that good KYC enabling process. If you look at Wirecard, they made a lot of money with adult entertainment, with drugs, with porn, with everything, but now they are legit. So they know that should not happen with Facebook, so therefore they now look at it from the first day.
Couldn't agree more. I think one of the big positives of this whole Libra thing is that the elephant in the room has been addressed. Yeah. It's really out there. Everybody talks about it. Central banks have to take it on. Regulators have to talk about it globally, not just somewhere, and so on and so forth. So even consumers will start to talk about things, and I think this is an accelerator that is kind of doing good, because the questions and the issues, they have been around for some time already, not been addressed by some elite groups. Now it's really out there in for the public. Everybody has to discuss about it, and I think it's, in that sense, it's really something extremely helpful.
I think that's a great point. Cryptocurrencies have done more than anything else to get people excited about innovation in financial services and the right type of innovation. And Libra is cryptocurrencies going mainstream, and we hit the nail on the head there, I think.
I would just like to pick up on the point John was mentioning, and I'm not quite sure if it went to the audience. What's also something to think about down the road for 5 years or even longer is those second layer protocols you can lay over a coin like Libra. That means you can build in smart contract routines. For example, if you want to have an insurance just for like half an hour for renting a car, you could actually program this onto the Libra coin, because it has these smart contract functions on it. So there is a lot of added value and efficiency coming to those new currencies, and they will come, but they need to come in I would say in a regulated way that it also works with the governments and the entities around it. But just think along these lines. It will change the way you do things with your money, because your money will have more programmable things on top of it.
I really like the point, because it's, for example, if you look at credit cards, the thing with the pre-authorization already exists. But now you can make it better, faster, cheaper with new technology. It will not change that much. It will only make it cheaper, faster, and definitely more transparent, as I see it.
Well, actually, that was the answer to my question. I thought, why wouldn't they just open their own bank and say, we deal with dollars, and you start with a payment, $100 whatsoever, and you have one global bank with.
They now need to look at regulation.
Now, basically, you said that's why you wouldn't deal with fiat money, but with something like Libra, because it's programmable. Is that the big advantage?
Well,
I mean, that
your question was why not being a bank, right?
Why not?
Well,
I mean, what comes to the benefit of not Facebook saying, okay, we're also a bank, and you can bring in your money, whatever money that may be. Start off with Swiss francs, with dollars, with Zimbabwe and whatever.
Maybe sounds extremely simplistic, but it's the blockchain technology behind it, that the ease of use that is programmable, that gives additional dimensions to the thing that you simply don't have with cash or currencies. That's the new information that you can use and will use at some stage. The big question I have is, why is this initiative based in Geneva?
That's a great discussion.
I mean, it's obviously a US institution to a large degree. It's basically US. Why does it have Geneva? I don't know.
I have some thoughts, but does anybody else?
I have thoughts as well, but they're gut feels.
Why don't you go first, and I'll try and first.
I mean, you probably have seen how the Congress reacted on the project. They're basically asked to shut it down or to stop it till they know what they're doing, or till the groundwork is done on their legal side. So I think they purposely did it on neutral grounds, let's call it. So the government, or the US government, can't just shut them down straight away. It's not in their jurisdiction.
And I think it's thing like you showed it with the shape slide.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah,
that point. And I really like the point because that's, we Switzerland forget a lot how good we are and what we really have here. Why we are better than other countries. Good. No, and therefore I think that's really the point, and we should never forget how good Switzerland is with its neutrality, with its stability, with political environment and everything. And that's really a great point for something that would like to change the world to start here.
I think it's a great question because there's a few different angles you could take on it. It can be a legal question, and definitely you hear from Shapeshift and other US entrepreneurs. Shapeshift's former founders was one of the guys who was locked up in the early days of Bitcoin by the, I think it was the SEC. He was running around with an ankle bracelet waiting to be thrown in jail. So people were legitimately concerned about this stuff. Zappo was actually one of the partners in the consortium, and they're a blockchain or a Bitcoin company. Long story to them, but they actually were founded here 3 years ago, and they kind of paved the way for the whole crypto valley explosion. They really talked very openly. They had big name investors behind them, and it's the same group of people that you see here at Libra. So I think actually their experience and the model that they showed was replicated by many in the crypto valley, and now you see it going mainstream with this Libra story. But I think in the bigger picture, to get beyond kind of the more superficial stuff, I think Geneva was a really good choice because of all the features that Switzerland offers, which are those ones from banking secrecy, but in the new age. Geneva has all these great global organizations, so if you want to be dealing with the UN, if you want to be going over to the Bank for International Settlements, if you want to be dealing with NGOs that are helping you spread internet to the world, it's actually one of the best places in the world to be doing all that. And yeah, I think actually even for the Crypto Valley perspective, things are really busy here in the East, and there's a lot of opportunity around Geneva, the financial system there, these global organizations, and also EPFL, which a lot of students have to travel and move to Zug if they want to get a job in blockchain. So now there's a great alternative.
And one thing I really like that you mentioned Xapo, because it's the only company that really surprised me a lot on that chart. Because Xapo gave a lot of statements, they only believe in Bitcoin, nothing else. Bitcoin, and that's the only truth. And now they're speaking about Libra. Ethereum is nothing for them, every other shitcoin is shit for them, but why Libra? And that, I like that, but it scares me to say, because if they believe in it, it needs to be something big.
I have another question. Now, in this room here is a lot of people in foreign exchange and trading, FX, etc. Now, I was just having this thought. Let's say Libra is a success. It's distributed all over the place, and it needs to be somewhat issued, right, by this company. And let's say they decide and say, you know what? You can buy a Libra from me, 1 Libra, and you can pay me $1 or €1 or 1 Swiss franc or £1. And, could that in theory materialize and have an influence on the FX rates, obviously, of the other tradable currencies, if it's a great success, or would that not be possible at all?
I mean, so far we don't know what the exchange is. I mean, we don't know the composition of the basket and so on and so forth. And, there needs to be some rationale behind this basket. Is it stable? How long is it stable? Is it changing? What are the conditions that it's changing? And so on and so forth. And will Switzerland be involved, for instance, or will they not? Will it be the big, where they have a lot of debt issuance out there? Is it basically giving those guys a benefit that issued debt, and so on and so forth? All these questions have not been, to my understanding, not been answered. They are out there, they're in the white paper clearly addressed. People are aware of this, they want to discuss this, they want to take it up. Once you have this, obviously there will be some pre-positioning, trading taking place, depending on whether it's fixed, whether it's not fixed, whether it's changing, what the rationale is behind it. There will always this deals going through once you know how the currency basket is composed.
So yeah, there will definitely be triangulation of the basket versus all the other currencies around. So there will be deal flows going through, like you know it in the FX market with other baskets which are out there. But as Reto mentioned, as long as you don't know what the rules of their baskets are, you can't really do the triangulation.
Will bank start to use Libra because they can program and put all the regulatory documents on it, KYC, all the stuff you need to do these days? When will Lenzburg issue first Libra and mortgage?
Not tomorrow.
I think the banks will definitely work with cryptocurrency or with a stable coin or whatever. The question is which one it will be. For example, we have seen with JP Morgan, they issued their own currency to send money in between their own systems. Will there be a global currency? Swift is working on a solution. All the platforms are working on a solution. There is a really big cryptocurrency out there, Ripple, where I'm not the biggest fan of it, but they are trying the same. So there will definitely be a bank currency they use, but which it will be, it's different to say.
I have a very bold idea of how this should work, or my thinking is there are two big layers of currencies. There is the digitalization of your Swiss franc, which the SMB or the commercial banks in Switzerland might drive forward at some point, like the e-krona in Sweden. That is just your money, your cash, which gets digitalized and easier to handle, and maybe even with second layer protocols on top of it to do all these things you just mentioned. And then there are all the other coins, like Mauro just mentioned, different blockchain currencies with different types of second layer protocols behind, but they're more peer-to-peer. That is not really, for me, the currencies that you're going to use in commercial banking. So for me, it has two very distinguished routes of use of those currencies.
Yeah, I think it's like that reference currency idea in what we see in the fiat world, right? The US dollar, the euro, a few others are the dominant currencies, and then there's a whole collection of secondary currencies that kind of collect around them and have their pairs that are more common, right? Sorry.
And maybe since you set me up as being kind of an exponent from a smaller regional bank in Switzerland, why are we here amongst all these other guys? It's exactly the same rationale that we have had with others. It's a topic that will accompany us. We have to address it, whether we like it or not. We cannot escape. We better look at it at an early stage. We try to get involved at an early stage. Will we be front runners? Absolutely not. Does that mean that we need to sit back and wait to whatever happens and then basically say, okay, we can't do anything? Probably also not the best idea. So it's the idea to get involved with these topics at a compared with early stage to know where kind of enemy is probably a big word, but where the new developments are coming from, and then you can position yourself, and you can set up your business model accordingly and so on and so forth. I think it's a good choice. Yeah?
Isn't it a question that all these new coins, tokens, do have to cooperate with the central banks? That's why Bitcoin is not very welcomed by. We heard the story of People Bank of China stopped Bitcoin sending out and stuff like that. So as long as they all cooperate with the central bank, and the central banks do then have to control on the quantity of these currencies, isn't that the key?
Well, the purpose of Bitcoin was exactly not to be controlled by central banks. So it's the complete opposite universe and thinking behind why to have it. So Bitcoin will never belong to any central banks. That's not going to happen.
And this is quite another big, you indicated at the beginning, the big contrast between Libra and Bitcoin. I think to me this is the biggest difference. Libra wants to cooperate with central banks and looks for discussion with the regulator. Bitcoin tries to work separately from it. I'm not saying that they work against it, but they are kind of independently from it.
What's the big role that Visa and MasterCard are playing in there? Because you said it was important, but actually I'm thinking they're being made redundant by all of this. So what's their role in the whole?
I think you have a few details on it, but the general idea is that they're one of these gateways into the system. So they're one of the companies that enables transactions, that verifies transactions. And I think the reason they're in that is they want to hedge their bets, like many companies should be doing. This is a technology that could disrupt us. We want to be at the forefront, investing in our own disruption. So I think that's their strategy, and you see that also in the broader fintech world. They're two of the companies that are more involved, and yeah, threat breeds opportunity, right? So when they recognize that, they're at the forefront of trying to deal with it. That's it.
I think through credit card acquirers, they are on the merchant side, and credit card issuers, they are on our side. They have a network of billions of terminals they could tomorrow update and have Libra accepted. So they are very important. That's for me one of the biggest problems why Twin in Switzerland will never work as it should, because they do not work with the right companies together, and
it's also an island within a bigger world where all these Tencents and Facebooks are creating much bigger ecosystems that come into Switzerland as well. So, the other payment companies that are in there are actually even more modern fintech ones like Stripe and PayPal. So even they face the same sort of disruption as the system changes, and they can also play a role in adding value to it, I think.
For me, if we really symbolize Libra, it's PayPal 2.0, not that much more.
Yeah, a better PayPal.
Yeah, definitely.
So at the end of the day, you think that these are all the classic credit cards will disappear, right?
It's definitely a long-term question. As Patrick said, it's in Western Europe, in America, in Northern America. It will not be that big in the beginning, but a lot of other countries who have at the moment problems with payment systems, they will definitely use it. But I also think mid to long term, the payment industry will change completely. If it will be Libra, it's another point, but it will change completely because it makes no sense to run around with a card, and there is another invoice process behind it that should be linked everything together with a digital wallet.
Yeah, I mean, the technology is already changing. You don't need a credit card. It's like 1950s technology probably or something like that. Magnetic strips or maybe a chip now in Europe. The companies, as we were just saying, are in the medium term pretty susceptible to change. But I think in the longer term, the idea of facilitating short-term credit or retail credit, it's probably even more important than ever. So let's figure out the technology and figure out the organizations that are going to enable that.
And it's definitely true that the technological transfer happens faster and faster and faster and faster, but at the same time, you will always have these guys that will circulate from the latecomers to the show and so on and so forth. So it tends to be kind of lasting longer than everybody anticipates. The early movers, they're there already, they will be happy and so on and so forth, and moving ahead fast and faster, but there will be a bunch of people still kind of following thereafter.
I was just thinking, going beyond like the whole fiat connection and central banks, the one thing you can't do is pay your taxes, and I guess that's the kind of loop, right? Money has a big connection to paying taxes and being involved in a system, and that's kind of the ultimate connection is can you pay your dues to society with it? Just a thought.
Exactly. And another point where I really, as you say, the technology of credit cards are from the 50s. That's the point. They make 40,000 transactions a second, but not transactions, authorizations. Transactions happen once a day. It's very slow. So if you look at Bitcoin, the second latest that Patrick mentioned, you could be much faster than every credit card company today, because on the Lightning Network, if it really is out there and works, even on Bitcoin, you can make millions of transactions and then send them on a regular basis, and you will be much faster than nowadays. Really, the payment flow is for credit card transactions. Then Frick is a credit card acquirer, and it always took 2 to 5 days until we received the money from the other side, and so it's definitely not fast.
We have shown this inner circle of existing partners, and that's capped at 100. What do you think are the criteria to get in this inner circle? What is the most important? Well, are they putting it on auction, or the central bank may become a partner?
It's probably way more strategic, right? They're leaders in a particular segment that helps to add value to the overall consortium. They're forming, it's like if you're co-founding a company, who can add skills that we need, who strengthens the team, who raises our profile. So they're top name companies, they're venture capital, payment, transport, they're connecting things that all strengthen the core value proposition of what they're doing.
You need multipliers, as John already mentioned, and credit cards guys are already those multipliers that you reach even more people than you have on Facebook or on WhatsApp. And that these guys who are already on Facebook and WhatsApp can get to external people through those multipliers.
And it's written down very detailed, like it costs 10 millions, and you definitely need some kind of defined turnover, you need to be one of the leaders in your business sector, so it's really detailed written down, so not everyone or not every company who has 10 millions could be a node.
I think you need to be valued as a $1 billion company,
yes, exactly.
or above a $1 billion company.
And they have VCs in there who will invest in companies around the periphery. They have companies like Visa that will do that themselves as well. So it's that multiplier effect. That's a great way to put it.
So these were powerful and very inspiring 90 minutes. I would like to thank you very much for making it on such short notice and inspiring our members. Thank you very much.